One Church at Harvest Point, it's been 12 amazing years that we've had a chance to experience God's grace and his faithfulness in this local church. Every year on the second Sunday in February, we take time just to celebrate. Time to look back and a time to look ahead. When I think back when we first started back in 2014, it was an amazing moment. The realization that the Lord had given us this chance to be a part of a local church. Now, we know that there are a number of churches doing amazing things to God's glory. We were simply playing our part. And there was birthed Harvest Point Fellowship Church. And here we were in this retail strip with not enough money, not a lot of people, but we believed that the Lord had his hand on this ministry. And over the years, we've seen him show up in a number of ways, even getting into this building. But for those who remember, back on Mother's Day 2024, it's the first time that we had service in this building. But prior to that, we spent some seasons, a moment, looking forward to being in the building. In 2023, in December, we concluded our time at the previous location. The building was not complete. We're worried about timelines. We had run out of money with the budget, and it felt like a very difficult moment. In fact, it was a difficult moment. But what we saw was that the Lord used that moment to really bring us together. In fact, I recall we would show up to the property and members of the church would grab bricks, literally grab brick by brick, and help to build this facility. We would come out on Saturdays and clean up, paint walls, anything that we needed to do together so that we might have a place where we could worship together. And since that time, even unto now, we've seen God do some amazing things. As I think about last year, 2025, a lot of great things we experienced coming into the year. One of the biggest things that we had the chance to do was go into our children's ministry space. If you recall, our kids were in the building, they were in the fellowship hall, they were in classrooms, but we were anticipating the moment to build out our children's ministry space. We barely got into this building. When we got here, all we had was concrete floors and a few chairs and people who had vision, people who were hopeful. And as the months went by, we had a chance to build out various spaces. So our kids space was launched and they've been flourishing. Our kids as young as 6 weeks old, all the way up to 5th and 6th grade. We've also had a chance to build out some other spaces in this building, like the mother's room and some of our classrooms. And this task, though it seemed simple to some, was a work for us. Still working through various challenges, we saw God's hand in this place. We called the men out, for example, and the men would come out and lay sod in the back of the property and paint and continue to build. That's the testimony of this local church, that we're doing this together. And in this, we've had a chance to build wonderful community together, see great programs be established as the Lord has given us permission to do a work. In fact, in 2025, one of the great things we experienced was the launch of Harvest Point Academy, preschool. We have great leaders who love children, who love the Lord, for providing great leadership to that space. And our kids are flourishing in that space, all because God has his hand on us. The counseling center expanded. There are a number of counselors now who serve at the counseling center. A number of our members who otherwise might avoid counseling have been encouraged to find themselves in front of a godly counselor, talking through the issues of life. God has moved in that space because God has his hand on us. Hope of Harvest, an organization that we started some years ago, had a chance to further flourish as we've been in this space. In fact, last year, we offered a number of scholarships to those who are going off to college, an internship with 15 young people who learned skills about business world and how to conduct themselves when they leave the home. And so it was a great opportunity to see God move in big ways because, again, God has his hand on us. In fact, that organization has given out almost $100,000 in scholarships over the years. And so we're just excited about what God has done and what he's done with the people who are part of this church, how much the church has grown. One of the other big opportunities we experienced was the launch of the third service. As the church continues to grow, we thought it necessary to cast vision for the potential of a third service. We talked about it as early as February, and by September, we're able to successfully launch the third service in order to reach new people and to make room for the people who are already a part of this church. And the Lord has been blessing each service in its own way. I think back about the men's night of worship, a great night where we had more than 200 brothers show up and just lay out before the Lord, cry out to God and worship together. Such a great experience. The women who they do a number of events throughout the year had a chance to break bread at L4 a few times and had their own chance to retreat and have a retreat just for women to talk to God and to connect with other sisters in the faith. A great time to see God do a great work here at the local church. We've also had a chance to expand how we do student youth camp in the summertime. There was a time when we would take 10, 15, maybe 20 kids to camp. But in 2025, we had the privilege to get the whole camp to ourselves. Normally we are there with a number of other organizations, but because we had more than 200 kids show up for camp, the whole camp was ours the time we were there. What a joy it was to see these young people get outside of their normal experiences in order to be out and on the countryside, hearing the voice of the Lord, having fun together to the glory of God. And for Thanksgiving, for the first time in the life of this church, we had Thanksgiving dinner together. We had talked about this over the years, but this is the first time we had a chance on Thanksgiving to invite people in our body to come out and break bread together. We recognize that a lot of people who are part of this local church don't necessarily come from this city. They came in for work or moved to this side of town, or maybe didn't have connection to family, or maybe had family, but they were not planning to go anywhere. And so we decided to have a meal together, maybe expecting a few folks to show up, and more than 100 people came and broke bread with us. A great time to fellowship on that great holiday, something that will be a part of this church as long as the Lord gives us space to do it. Also, family, early this year, after waiting a number of years, we had a deacon ordination. Some brothers who have been walking together for over a year, reading the scripture together, training together to be prepared to do what the scripture calls serving tables. That is, to serve people as the preaching of the word goes forward. And more than 20 brothers showed up to be a part of that ordination. It was such a great moment in the life of this church. One of the big initiatives that we had towards the end of the year, in order to meet some deadlines, we called the church to help us complete a major portion of our parking lot. You remember, we put out a plan, and within 60 days, you all responded. We were able to add to the parking lot, which made it a lot easier for people to get on the property and off of the property as we continue to build in this local church. One of the great moments past year, was on New Year's Eve. We have New Year's Eve services often, but this time we said, you know what, we want to put an emphasis on baptism. And more than 20 people on that night were baptized. What a joy it was to see people, as we approach the new year, make a decision to make that public declaration of the faith that they have on the inside. 2025 was a great year for us, and we believe that 2026 will be great as well. In fact, one of the things that we've been pressing into as we look ahead is how can we better impact our teenagers? We've always tried to be intentional, to have ministry available to them, to serve them well with programs and events and mentorship and counsel. And now as we step into this new year, there are some new opportunities. They currently meet in our fellowship space, and I believe they're flourishing there. But by design, this building was built in such a way that they would have dedicated worship space, dedicated fellowship space, a space of their own. And as we look forward in this year 2026, that is the place that we're putting our emphasis. It is our goal this year, in the first part of this year, to complete the teen ministry space, where they have their own worship area and a lot of things that will be built specifically for them. We're so excited because the same way we saw people help build this building brick by brick, the same way we all rallied together to finish our children's ministry space, the same way that we came together to finish multiple spaces in this building, we know that together we can complete the space for them. And so I invite you to be a part of that as we look to continue to go deep in this vision that God has given us here at this local church. I am excited about all the people who have gathered and joined this church, and I pray that you recognize that this is not just about showing up one day a week and having one service, but this is about building community together. This is about trusting the Lord together. This is about being family together. And here at One Church at Harvest Point, we invite you in 2026 to continue to be on this journey with us together as a church family. Welcome home.